All right, guys, welcome to another Global Schools Rugby update. For this time for the 27th of May. Apologies, it's a day late. Extremely busy this side, so was just able to get to it, quite late. But before we get into the scores, interesting news came up. Robbie Rogers and Cade Volhiter from Porus have both signed for Montpellier. And I'd hate to say I told you so, Saru, but I told you so. Now, Jared Taylor and Jacques Wilson were also offered contracts by French clubs, but they're joining the Sharks. So what are my thoughts on the matter? It's inevitable. This was always going to happen. I've talked about this in a lot of my podcasts before. You can't expect to keep top-tier youth in a third world country, let's face it, with a weak economy. These guys are looking for more opportunities. And this is an opportunity if Saru can approach the RRB and we can work something out. Because I think it's great. It's a great opportunity for these youngsters. They're going to go to world-class facilities. The French clubs are pumping money into their clubs, and they're basically trying to create super clubs. And I think what you're going to find out is that as soon as they start winning more European trophies and they become completely dominant in it, the English clubs will see this, the Irish clubs will see this, the Welsh and Scottish clubs will see this, and they're also going to start following the same model where they're going to build super clubs. I'm telling you now, it's going to happen. So Ireland is still very protectionist, not compared to South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand, not even close, but they're still pretty protectionist because they want their talent to come through. But I think what you're seeing with the French is that they're going to completely change the game. And these youngsters coming over is just going to be just the beginning. So what's already got to do, and with the RRB and the French Rugby Union, whoever, all the stakeholders, basically everyone's got to sit down and say, right, so if you do take these youngsters at the age of 18, someone has to be compensated something, in all fairness. I mean, that's how it generally works with European soccer clubs. You can't just sign a teenager and not pay for anything because there was a developmental cost involved in getting him to where he is. So whether it's a bursary for that Porus gave them, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure they'd be on bursaries, these two. I'm 99% sure. So, maybe compensate Porus a little bit, and maybe compensate Western Province Rugby, which that Porus falls under. Use developmental levy or something like that. Look, it works out for everyone, because ultimately what will happen then is that more money can go into youth development and improving grassroots rugby, which is only going to be good for us. So, look, if we take the lead in this, guys, it can completely revolutionize our game. I'm telling you now. Have you ever noticed how when our guys go overseas and they play in Europe and they come back and play for the Springboks, it's like a miracle. It's almost 2 to 3 times the player he was before. It's no miracle. They're getting world-class coaching at world-class facilities. They're not being overplayed. They're not being coached by some dumb prick who says, push, kick. Nothing like that. They're being coached by the best because it's very competitive leagues. So, like I said, I think there's a big opportunity here for South African, grassroots rugby, where there could be some compensation, more money flows into the grassroots level of the game, and basically benefits top European clubs in the future potentially. It's a difficult one because what I don't want to happen, and I think Montpellier probably pitched this to the French Rugby Union saying, hey, look, in 5 years' time, these guys are going to basically qualify for France. That's what, if you take a look at these two, 23, 24 years old, that's a pretty good time to make your international debut. That's when you'd expect a lot of top-tier talent to make the international debut. So let's hope that they don't get captured. Let's hope that they still qualify for the South African under-20 team, and they still accept invitation to play for SA under-20. Let's hope that the worst thing that Saru could do right now to try and make an example out of these two would be to ban them from SA school selection. If you do that, I guarantee you a shitload more other players are going to start jumping ship and start looking at Europe with bigger eyes and are going to be representing the top European teams. Now, this will eventually happen in Australia, and this will eventually happen in New Zealand. I'm telling you now, Europe is in the process of building super clubs, and it's going to be good for the global game. At the end of the day, Southern Hemisphere rugby can't survive the long term. We've reached our peak in terms of our internal competitions. The only way forward is going to be able to create European super leagues where the guys can earn good salaries and then get released for the international windows. And that's going to drive interest in the game. That's exactly what happened with soccer. Rugby's got to follow the path, but we got to put the rules and regulations in place now so that it doesn't start getting to a case where you get 13 or 14-year-old kids going over to Europe. I mean, there's a big danger of that happening because it starts like this and it goes younger and younger. So we got to basically put measures in place where, hey, you let the boys finish matric and then you can bring them over, pay some compensation fees determined by a tribunal, and then you can have at it. Because as the game grows in Europe and transfer fees become larger, these clubs are going to be able to recoup their money and then some. You understand what I mean? Anyway, I've gone on about this a bit long, so let's just get straight into the results, which I assume the majority of you here for. So in terms of South Africa, Garsfontein, great win over Menlo Park, 46-28. Look at that, Monument Transvalia. Now, Transvalia were a pretty decent team last year. Look at that, 92-12. Westville beating Maritzburg College. Maritzburg, absolutely dominant school at one stage, huh? And another school that was very dominant at one stage, Daniel Pinnock, getting an absolute smashing by Grey, 71-7. Queens finally won a game. Great news over there for Queens. Beat Graham College, 47-29. Fransby giving Marlow a big smack, 59-0. Selborne beating St Andrews, 28-12. I always said this was going to be an interesting game. Now, they had Goosen and they had Taylor on the field. So I think, like I said, when they got those two boys on the field, it's plus 10, 15 points for Selborne. Kes beat Waterkloof 29-13. You'll recall that Waterkloof beat Monument recently. So very good win there for Kes. Affie's finally back to winning ways against JP 47-28. JP got a pretty good team this year, so good win there for Affie's. Paul Jim, comfortable win over Sachs, 41-19. And then another loss by Paul Russ against Paul Boys, 29-16. I can't help but feel these soft fixtures have really, really nailed him. I think it's a transition from the very soft fixtures to two extremely, extremely tough fixtures. I think if they could have played some of the southern suburbs schools and gradually integrated themselves into the pace and the physicality of the South African game, it would have helped. But after playing some very weak schools and coming back and having to play the two Paul schools, I just think it's been too much. Boland Landbou against Stellenberg, 51-38. Great win for Boland Landbou. Stellenberg are looking good this year. I could imagine this being an absolute advert for running rugby between these two schools. And then Wynberg beating Huguenot, 29 points to 6. So those are the core results that I'll focus on. So we get straight into the top 10. 10th place, we've got St Andrews down by 2 after they lost to Selborne. 9th, I got Kes up by 1 place. Good win there over Waterkloof, 29-13. Propels them a little bit. Framsby gone up by a place as well. I mean, a massive score against Marlow, who are one of the Eastern Cape powerhouses. I'm not too sure how they're doing this year, but still a very good win there for Framsby, and they've had some excellent wins this year, so they're looking very good this year, Framsby. Rondebosch didn't play any games, but so they stay in the same place. Porus, I got down by 2. Now, some of you might say to me, how the hell can you have a 50% winning record and be in the top 10? Well, this is Porus, and I'm telling you right now, they beat most other schools that are on this list. In fact, I'm pretty sure they could beat Monument and Garsfontein. So don't think too much into these two poll results. We'll wait until later in the season, but I don't base my rankings on any mathematical formula or anything like that. I base it on my gut. So my gut tells me 6th place, down by 2, Porus. Then in 5th place, up by 1, got Monument. You can see just the loss to the two Paul schools in Waterkloof, big upset there. Came back nicely with the win against Garsfontein and a big win against Transvalia. And then Garsfontein up by 1 as well. Obviously, these two schools went up by 1, as well as my next on the list, because Paul Roos had a bit of a fall from grace, so to speak. And then we got third place, Paul Boys, up by 1. Very good win over Paul Roos there, but still I don't think we can quite put them in second place yet, because second place Poldrum are looking really good this year, and they stay in the same position. They didn't play the last weekend, obviously, so they stay in the same position. And obviously, number 1, and I'm going to try and sound positive over here, because someone said I sounded quite negative or defeatist. It's not negative or defeatist, it's like, here we go again, because I mean, how many times do I have to say Grey College number 1? It's almost an expectation now, right? But they didn't play either, but just look at these results. They are the number 1 in the country, and they're number 1 by some damn distance as well, I'll tell you that much. Okay, so moving on to New Zealand. Auckland competitions in its 4th round, and take a look at that first result. Kings beating St. Kitts 52-19. That's a big result. St. Kitts were supposed to be banned from this year's competition because they poached all these excellent players. So I don't know if that helps with Kings' argument, because they signed against them. I don't know if it helps with their argument or it goes against their argument. But anyway, Colston, very big win over Dilworth, 40 points to 3. Sacred Heart beating Tangaroa, 29 points to 8. De La Salle, very good victory against Mags, 36 points to 7. St. Peter's keeping Liston scoreless, 36-0. And Auckland Grammar, nice win over Aurora, 29-12. So the top 4 pretty much stays the same. Auckland Grammar followed by Kings, followed by De La Salle, then Colston. The UC Championship in round 4, Christchurch Boys, after their loss last weekend, came back quite nicely against Mid-Category Combined, 108-0. Waimea combined against Araki, 43-0. St. Bede's nice win against Marlborough, 21-10. Shirley beating Timaru, 32-17. Nelson, tight win in a high-scoring game against Rangiora, 43-38. Lincoln combined and Christ having a draw, 22 points each. And St. Andrews continuing their good form with a 26-14 win over St. Thomas. So your top 4, St. Andrews College are up by 1. First place, second place, Christ dropped down by 1. Third place, Nelson up by 1. And in 4th place, we've got Christchurch Boys, who are a new entrant. And the North Harbour, round 4, my favourite, Manurewa beating Massey, 1911. Westlake beating Rangitoto, 41-0. Rosmini versus Orowa, 51-17. And Whangarei against Takapuna, 31-0. Your top 4 stays the same, except for the new entrant, Manurewa, in 4th place. CNR round 2. Wanganui beating St. John's Hamilton 59-14. St. Paul's beating Lindisfarne in a tight game 21-19. St. John's Hastings, good win over there against Rathkill 19-15. Wesley and St. Peter's Cambridge playing to a draw 17-all. And Francis Douglas Memorial beating Fielding in a very tight game 25-22. So after 2 rounds, St. John's Hastings are up by 2 in first position. St. Paul's second position. Wanganui third position, both new entrants, and 4th place you've got Wesley, who stay in the same position. Then the Super 8, only 1 game has been played so far in round 1. Palmerston North beating Hastings, very big win over there for Palmerston North. Not in score, but in terms of the team they play, and Hastings are generally a very strong school, so 32-25 win. Good win over there for Palmerston North. So in terms of the top 4, well, we've only got 2 teams so far, Palmerston North and Hastings, both new entrants, so we'll wait and see. And then we've got the Wellington Premier League, round 1. St. Pat's Silverstream beating Wairarapa 19-12. Scots beating Rongotai 48-19. St. Pat's Town beating Kapiti 62 points to 18. Aotea beating St. Bernard's 43-7. And Wellington having a big win over Hutt International 59-0. So obviously they're all new entrants. First place we have Wellington, second St. Pat's Town, 3 Aotea, and 4th Scots. So in terms of the Australian League, I'm going to be covering the competitions, the following competitions, and the start dates. As you can see, I'm with the AGPS starts on the 15th of June, CAS starts on the 15th of June as well, and then the GPS starts on the 20th of July. I'm not going to really go through any preseason results. I'm going to really focus on the actual leagues themselves, as that's going to be a significant contributor to my global schools rankings that I'll do towards the end of the year. Anyway, guys, thanks a lot for watching. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on how you found this podcast and what you think about the news of our youngsters being taken over to European clubs. Think it's a good thing? Think it's a bad thing? And what are your opinions on what's going to happen for the rest of the season? I think we got some interesting games coming, and I know there's a lot of people that feel schools like Selborne and Bishops and that should get a look in at the top 10. I think over the next 2 to 3 weeks, you're going to completely see the ranking system change, completely see it change. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, have a great week further. And thanks a lot, as always, for taking the time to listen.